Man, I was just reading one of the most recent interviews of Carlos Santana, and I gotta tell you, there's some incredible wisdom from that interview. And it's wisdom that's not just for us guitar players, but I think for anyone who's making art, especially any of you that are making music out there, whether you're a horn player, drummer, whatever. The wisdom here just blew my mind, and I want to share it with you guys. And my hope is that sharing this with you will help you along this crazy-ass path of making art and making music and playing instruments. So are you ready? Let's absorb some of this wisdom from Santana. All right, first little bit of wisdom. Check this out. The question is asked, do you think you could make a $100 guitar sound like you? Santana says, absolutely. I can make any guitar sound like me. I love it. Something important for even musicians that have played for a long time is you place such an importance on gear. And it's not that gear is unimportant, but I agree with Santana. Give me a cheap guitar and I'll still sound like me. Give Santana the $100 guitar, he'll still sound like him. There's a great video, you'll have to look for it, of Joe Satriani playing this fan's cheap Mexican Squire Strat. And yeah, Satriani still sounds like Joe Satriani, even on that. Now, because it was such a cheap guitar, there were certain things that Joe couldn't do on that Strat. You know, it's like he wants to do certain things that he's used to doing on his Ibanez, but he couldn't do it. So one reason why you do want a little more expensive gear is than, say, a $100 guitar is because you want the damn thing to stay in tune while you play. A $100 guitar probably won't stay in tune for very long. And you don't want these things to break. There's a whole bunch of other reasons, but some of it you want more expensive gear because you want it to actually do the job of making music and not constantly breaking on you, which is really frustrating and definitely kills the vibe. Let's move on to his next bit of wisdom. He's asked, are there any guitar techniques you'd still like to perfect? And Santana says, I don't want to perfect a technique. I'd rather develop innocence and purity. I gotta admit, it's a little out there, even though I totally get what he's saying, and I hope you do too. But it is a little out there talking about innocence and purity. And I'm gonna try to interpret it as best I can in that when you're making music, you don't want to pretend to be someone else. So there's the purity in that you are truly expressing yourself, who you really are as the music maker. And the innocence, I think he's referring to a childlike innocence or a beginner's innocence. Do you remember being a beginner guitar player or piano player when you first started? That excitement you had, like, oh my God, I'm gonna play these songs like the people I love, like my heroes. And there's such enthusiasm because there's an innocence about it. You don't know yet how hard it is and how much work there is. But there's this playful innocence, and I think that's what Santana is referring to. In fact, I'm very sure because he talks about this in a different question. So, childlike innocence, purity being yourself and not pretending to be someone else. Okay, his next bit of wisdom, I thought this was kind of cool. Santana says, music reminds people that we are divine. No matter what your mind says or what the media says, a quote-unquote media mind is not necessarily good for you. Sometimes you turn off the TV and you can hear the clouds moving, the birds chirping, children laughing. So again, notice at the end he brings up the children and innocence. And whether you believe that music reminds people that they are divine, whether you believe in that, doesn't matter. It was the media mind that really got to me because too much media, I think, really is depressing. And it is amazing when you turn all that crap off. Stop watching football. Stop watching Netflix. Stop watching too many YouTube videos. except for mine, of course. And Hulu and all the streaming stuff, when you turn all that crap off, it is amazing the things you feel, the things you start to hear. I will tell you, way back in the day, once I stopped all that stuff and said, I'm going to go full bore into music, it was incredible how after like even a couple of weeks, I started hearing things that I had never really realized before. And it actually is pretty powerful. The point here is turn that shit off. Let's play some music and listen. All right, here's his next bit of wisdom. He's asked, you once said rock and roll is a swimming pool, jazz is an ocean, and you hang out on a lake. Is that still how you view it? He says pretty much, yes. An ocean is Charlie Parker, Coltrane, Miles, Wayne Shorter, and John McLaughlin. It's a different form of supreme improvisation. And the interviewer asks, and do you feel like you can drop into that world quite naturally? Santana says, you know, what comes more naturally to me is making a melody come true. Wow. That is unbelievable, because he's taught in this context, Santana is talking about improvisation, just, making up the solo on the spot. And sometimes I think we feel that improvisation needs to be a shred fest. Look at how many notes I can play. Look at my perfect technique when it comes to making music up on the spot. And Santana goes the route of melody and making that melody come true as a natural part of his music making. I totally agree with him on this. One thing, so here's my little bit of advice. This comes from Marty Friedman too. When it comes to improvising and playing melodies, is to sing it, even if you're not a singer. So when you do that, I think the sounds that come out of you are more true. Of course, you have to develop a little technique that the things you're singing out loud or even in your head, that you know how to play that, translate that into your guitar. You know where those notes and those sounds are. But I thought that was just spectacular of an answer. Just what's natural is making the melody come true, not playing fast licks or shredding or being a guitar god. He just says, I'm just going to make this melody come true. All right, check this out. He's asked, do you use a framework or fly by the seat of your pants when it comes to playing his songs? And Santana says, yeah, by the seat of my pants. Miles Davis used to say, play like you don't know how to play. Purity and innocence are the best components for any kind of music. Oh man, I love that from Miles Davis. Play like you don't know how to play. My guitar coach, mentor, the person who really saved me and allowed me to continue playing guitar, she says kind of the same thing, that when she sits down to practice, she literally says herself, this is the first time I'm playing guitar. And she's a fantastic player. She's played for decades. And she goes through the same process as Santana, taking that innocence of being a beginner, like this is my first time, and using and going with that to make their music. Clearly he's not a beginner. I'm not a beginner. And clearly my guitar mentor is not a beginner either. But you go with that attitude. And again, Carlos is referencing that childlike innocence, that sense of play. And I think that's what you really hear in Carlos's music. And I think it's something more of us. That's what we should do, is not worry about being a hot shot or not thinking that we're a hot shot. Just play like you're a beginner with that kind of enthusiasm, even though you're not a beginner. But have that sense of play. Next bit of wisdom. Carlos has asked, do you ever worry we'll eventually run out of original guitar parts? And Carlos says, no, I don't, because it's a language that will always develop, like living water. Not sure what he means by the living water part, but let's continue. I think it was Tony Bennett that said, if you take from one person, it's called stealing, but if you take from many, it's called research. That I absolutely agree with and love. Sometimes we find a particular music hero and we have to learn every single solo, every single little nuance and copy it until we sound exactly like that idol, or at least we try as hell to sound exactly like that person. So that way, somebody else will say, oh my God, you sound just like Joe Satriani. I can't tell you two apart. You sound just like Eric Clapton. You just sound like Gilmore. I can't tell the difference between you two. And what Carlos is saying here is that's not what you want to do because that's stealing. So you have a lot of influences out there, and that's called research. And I agree with them there because you want to take all your influences and take those things into becoming who you are as an artist, as a music maker. So if you haven't already, what you should really do is sit down with a piece of paper and write down the guitar players you love. You love them so much, it kills you not to learn some of their parts, not to learn their solos. And put down as many as you can think of. And I have done that. So some of you know my influence, Marty Friedman, Joe Satriani, David Gilmour, Stevie Ray Vaughan. The list goes on, but I have this nice long list of influences, and I always learn little things from all of them. Okay, I love this next bit of wisdom. He's asked, the guitar instrumental Santana celebration is like an explosion. What emotions were going through you while recording that? So he replies, Tito Puente, B.B. King, Woodstock. But here's what I like. He says, a track like that, you just have to do it on the spot. Say your piece. I feel it is important to tell my mind to shut up because the mind always wants to criticize and analyze everything. Sound familiar? I don't want to give my mind any room for disturbing what I'm doing. When you create a CD like Abraxas Supernatural or Blessings and Miracles, literally it's like giving birth to a baby, and you don't want your mind to disturb the baby, so you tell it to get the hell out of the room. Okay, baby part aside, absolutely, our mind fucks with us so bad. And I have a video from like a year and a half ago where I was trying to learn Always With Me, Always With You. And my mind just kept screwing with me saying, you know what, why bother doing this? Because you're not going to play it as well as Joe Satriani. You're not Joe Satriani. And I think every single one of us, from beginners to more advanced people and guitar heroes like Santana, still deal with the mind criticizing, and it's something you kind of just have to, tell it to leave the room. I think a better way of dealing with that, just as a piece of advice, is knowing that that will always be there and that you can't fight it. I don't think you can do necessarily what Carlos says, which is just tell it to get out of the room and ignore it. That fighting it won't work. You kind of have to learn to dance with it. Your mind is going to take you away. You suck, don't do it. And you have to say, no, I'm leading, so we're going to dance this way. And you're kind of doing this dance with yourself and your mind. And that is what's going to get you to make more music and produce some of your best stuff. So learn to dance with that fear and your stupid mind criticizing you and telling you, you're no good, this is no good, it sucks. That's normal. So learn to dance. Having played in a tribute band, I totally get what Santana is saying in this next piece of wisdom. What advice would you give a Santana tribute band? Carlos says, I would just say you were born with your own fingerprints. You were born with your own sound, uniqueness, authenticity, individuality. I'm grateful, and it's a compliment that you play my music, but I would invite you to find your own because you're going to be happiest when you create music that is totally you, by you. Oh my, I love that so much. So a lot of you might know that I played in a Megadeth tribute band for many years, and it was a lot of fun. I loved playing with those guys, struggles and all, and the experiences were fantastic. But one reason why I stopped doing that is because I just had a hard time being someone else. I wanted to be me. I wanted to explore what kind of music can I make. There was also the issue that I was no longer able to play guitar anymore. I had some other issues, and some of you may know that history about me, that I had to relearn how to play guitar again. But that aside, there was still something nagging at me that I'm not being me. And I love that he says this. He invites those tribute players to go ahead and explore themselves and who they really are and to make the music by you. And that's something, even if you stink as a guitar player, who cares? make the music for you, by you. It's not like you need to release it. Just make that music, explore yourself, and keep doing this over many months, years. It's stuff that you could just play by yourself. But be you. Of course, that doesn't mean you don't ever learn a Santana solo or you learn a solo or guitar part from your favorite players. You still learn those things because you got to learn the language, the vocabulary, especially from people you love so much. But you take that, you turn it into yourself. All right, I hope you enjoyed some of this wisdom from Santana's latest interview. I admit some of this interview, some places he's a bit esoteric and way out there. I actually do kind of get what he's saying, even when he's out there. But these little bits of wisdom I got in just one interview, I thought was outstanding, and it needed to be shared and talked about a little bit. So if you guys want, please comment and talk about these little bits of wisdom. What affected you most? What did you most identify with in these little bits of wisdom? Let me know in the comments. I really want to talk about this and share it with you. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Please tap the subscribe button, and if you haven't already, tap that notification bell so you will know the next time I put out a video. Keep on making music, and thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.